So today's talk is going to be given by myself and my tutor. It's split into two, and I'll have to apologize to my tutor because I'm stealing her limelight here. Ideally, the talk is centered around the wonderful work that she did. Now, I'm not just saying it's wonderful work because I've been working with Matilda since 2021 here, but she did some really amazing work, and you see for yourselves when she gives the second part of the talk. But in essence, what she's going to talk about is part of a much larger vision that we have in our research group. And I'll talk a bit more about our research group just now. But so the title of the first part of the talk, which is going to be given by yours truly, is Towards Increased Online Visibility of Research Output in Zambia. And I decided to sneak in aspects of challenges, tools, and effective approaches, but I'm going to skim through this because in the interest of time, I would much rather Matilda focuses on the work that she did as part of her master's. Matilda was graduating, by the way, a few days ago. And what I also did was I took the liberty to include names of students that I have worked with or I am still working with. Some of them have graduated, some of them are still around, obviously, because it turns out that aspects of what I'm going to talk about will actually appear in their respective dissertations. All right. So this will be an outline of my short first talk here. I'm going to start off by just doing a bit of marketing here. I happen to be a founding member of a research group at the University of Zambia called the DataLab Research Group. The website is on the bottom right corner. Please do encourage you to find the time and look at some of the things that we do, because beyond what we're talking about right now, it turns out that we actually do quite a bit of other things. So it may just be that you may be interested in some other aspects of what we do. But in a nutshell, the lab itself comprises of academic staff at UNZA and some of our collaborators. So you notice that most of the members, the academic members of staff are from UTH and University of Cape Town anyways. And predominantly students, so both undergraduate and postgraduate students. There's a wealth of information on our research group website. I do encourage you to find the time and check us out, in part because our specialization is in data mining, right? In the recent past, we've done extensive work centered around educational data mining, for instance. I'll give you an example of our most recent project, which was aimed at trying to see if we could identify students that are at risk of failing. So if you do research that involves a lot of data mining or working with data and you feel you need a collaborator, please reach out to us or visit our website and check out more on what it is we do. I'm going to jump right straight into the talk, right? There's a lot that has been written about in regards to research visibility in Africa. I know this article is quite old. This is from 2015, but I think most of it is still true, right? Apparently, or reportedly, there was this article in the Guardian which indicated that Africa only produces about 1.1% of the global scientific knowledge. It's really, really bad, right? Especially if you compare this with, I guess, the proportion of Africa's population relative to the entire world. Now, if your argument is, 2015 is too old here, there are other people that have done amazing things. I don't know how many of you have come across these wonderful visualizations. These are scaled versions of the world map relative to different things. This particular map of the world is showcasing the map of the shapes of the various continents relative to their contribution of publications, right? Scientific publications. Now you see that Africa here, in light green here, is contributing far less, right, in comparison to much, much smaller continents. Serious problem here if you look at it from the perspective of Africa, right, the global south, if we can call it that. Now, if we come to Zambia, there are people that have done more recent interesting studies. Today, I came across this interesting paper which has a lot of amazing statistics, right? I want to draw attention to the first table to my left here, which seems to suggest that based on the ranking in Africa, like top 20, contributions of journals, top 20 countries, Zambia comes out as number 13. Apparently, there's about a total of 17 journals that were identified to have been archived somewhere. I've forgotten the platform where this information was sourced from. That one of the places was Africa Journals Online. The table on the right, on the other hand, is quite telling, right? And it raises very serious concerns. I want to draw attention, for instance, for the column that says journals under Web of Science. Apparently, Zambia does not have any journals indexed there, all right? Compromising the visibility of research coming from Zambia. If you look at Scopus, very same picture, right? 0 journals coming from Zambia. Fortunately, we seem to have something in Crossref, and people like, I just saw Bridget here attend, who appreciate what we've been doing as part of DRGS journals such as JABS, Jonas, and JLSS. I think the deliberate measures that UNZA has put in place to deposit or register publications in some of the UNZA journals via Crossref is the reason why we have that, right? But anyways, you don't have to. I know there are usually arguments that are made around databases such as Web of Science and Scopus, but if we look at one of the most widely used academic databases like Google Scholar, which incidentally indexes great literature, right? You find everything and anything here. Depending on how you're indexing things like your blog or your website, for instance, you will have content indexed here, right? For instance, my blog, my personal blog, is indexed within Google Scholar because I've put in deliberate measures to ensure that publications that I archive on my blog are actually indexed within Google Scholar, right? So if we just do a focus search on academic institutions in Zambia, if you look at the red bounding box on top, what I'm doing is I'm doing a search for academic institutions with the .zambia domain. You notice that shockingly, there's only about 169 results. Now, if you sit down and think about this, you appreciate the gravity of the situation, right? We have a lot of higher education institutions with a .zm domain, cbu.ac.zm, unilas.ac.zm, Mulungushi, or is it mu.ac.zm, right? Nkrumah.ac.zm. The question we should be asking ourselves is, where is their content, right? If their content is online, we've done studies, by the way, recent studies that seem to suggest that their content is not online, but if it is online, then there's something fundamentally wrong in terms of how they're indexing their content, right? The picture changes slightly if perhaps we sneak in UNZA, right? Because those of you who understand, if I can quote the science behind domains, is that if you're registering a domain for an academic institution, ideally it should have an SC, right? If it's registered in Zambia, it would be something .ac.zm or something. UNZA is an exception because it turns out that an important entity code, is it not Zamtel? I don't know why I'm forgetting here. But there's a company that was born outside of UNZA, right? And that's the reason
Zamnet, I think.
Thank you very much, it's Zamnet. That's the reason why UNZA has a .zm domain. But in an ideal case, UNZA is supposed to be a .ac.zm. The same applies to the central bank, right? BOZ is .zm, but it's not supposed to be .zm. It should be something like .gov.zm or something. But that's besides the point. If we include UNZA, you notice that the picture changes slightly. We're moving from 169 results or hits in Google Scholar to about 7,310 results. But unfortunately, it turns out that most of these are actually electronic theses and dissertations. So these are manuscripts that are produced by our master's students and our PhD students, for the most part. And the challenge is that, and I'll showcase screenshots here so that you fully understand what we're talking about here. The challenge is that in as much as a number of researchers at UNZA actually publish, but we don't deliberately ensure that the things that we are publishing are deposited into the institutional repository, for instance. Or for those of you that are smart enough, we don't deliberately ensure that we edit our respective staff profiles, right? With those publications or preprints of those publications. So it turns out that we've, over the last couple of years, a number of students I've been working with, we've looked at, together with a number of students I've been working with, we've looked at this problem from so many different angles. We actually started doing this back in 2018 when I think this was a year into my stay at UNZA. And we did a study which was centered around trying to understand the online visibility of scholarly research output. Picture is really, really gloomy. I do encourage you to find time to perhaps read this work, but in there you will find graphs that paint a really bad picture about the state of visibility of research in Zambia, ideally. There's more recent work which I've been a part of. There's a university ranking committee at UNZA, which in part is tasked to produce what are called annual research output reports. If you look at the results from the 2018 research report, you notice that there are certain things that don't make a lot of sense, right? I want to draw attention to the table on the bottom that showcases the output ratio. So you're looking at the number of publications versus the number of staff. Now, for a person who doesn't understand what exactly goes on at UNZA, they may immediately start making insinuations like, well, schools like School of Engineering perhaps are not very productive, right? Because if you look at the proportion of publications against staff, you have far less publications than the number of staff. But it turns out that the reason why this is the case is the methodology used to collect the data. It turns out that it's difficult to collect information about what goes on in terms of research at UNZA. Part of what we were doing when we were compiling this information is we were going online on platforms like Google Scholar and actually hunting for publications that were associated to UNZA faculty staff. Okay? And so part of the reason why this looks like a very gloomy picture is because details about publications by members of staff or faculty staff at UNZA are just not available online. Okay? A more serious thing that we ought to think about really is tied to the reputation of the institution. Those of you that have spent time to read about how these ranking entities who actually rank universities will appreciate the fact that it's important to ensure that your research output is explicitly made available on platforms that you own. The screenshot is showcasing one such platform. This is the UNZA institutional repository. I don't know how many of you are aware of the existence of this platform. So you can gain access to it by going to dspace.unza.zm. But the sad part about this platform really is if you start looking at publications associated with faculty staff, you will find weird numbers like 7 for engineering. This doesn't make sense, right? Because the idea behind an institutional repository is it's supposed to be a place which is used to archive preprints and sometimes postprints of whatever has been published. So if somebody like Lighton publishes a book or a conference paper or a journal article, depending on the copyright restrictions, what they're expected to do is go and archive or deposit whatever has been published into the repository. The advantage is obviously tied to things like ranking, but there's more, and I'll talk about this just now. I know there's usually an argument that some academics will make, well, why do I have to worry about depositing content on the UNZA repository when I have an academia.edu account, or I have a ResearchGate account, or I have, is it a Google Scholar profile? Well, it's about the reputation of the institution in this case. It's usually sad, right, when you're attending a high-profile conference and people ask where you're coming from, and they Google you up and find that your institution ranks in the thousands here. But anyways, I guess in terms of why you should care, there's obvious obsession, the current obsession. This has come up at UNZA of late, the issue of rankings. I took a snapshot of a Webometrics ranking, and apparently UNZA is ranked number 72. Now, if you look at the red bounding box on the bottom, you realize that what they're saying is that part of what they do in terms of compiling these rankings is they look at details associated with your publishing record as an institution. And it turns out that what they'll typically do is they will try and crawl for this information from platforms that you manage as an institution. So in the case of UNZA, it would be platforms like the institutional repository or the recently launched, is it UNZA Journal platform? I don't know how many people are aware of the UNZA Journal platform, for instance, right? Sadly, if you have situations where, schools like engineering will have 7 publications or agricultural sciences will have 7 publications, when you know that there's more, then this picture is not really going to change that much. But there's more, right? With the, the hype around large language models like ChatGPT and Llama, for instance, what you begin to realize is I don't know how many of you have done this, but if you just ask ChatGPT to tell you information about yourself as an academic, you will realize that the more recent version will actually point to sources where this information is coming from. So what I did today was I took the liberty to look up Professor Mumba's profile. And what you notice here is that there's information that ChatGPT has compiled by making use of information associated with some library platform, for instance, the UNZA website, right? And I know that I think is part of, is it an editorial team for one of the Frontiers Loop journals or something? So again, just more motivation for why you may want to seriously think about making sure that you carefully, curate the research that you publish, right? In addition, though, there's something that we've been thinking about with a master's student that I recently started thinking about. I don't know how many of you have asked the question to the effect, why is it that when we're reading things in mainstream media, right, or print-based media, there's very little written about research being done at places like UNZA? Well, part of the reason is because this information is not available online, right? If I publish and if I do research and I only publish in these so-called top-tier venues and I don't archive my research in platforms that are easily accessible by journalists in Zambia, then it's unlikely that they would even bother to write about my work, right? Anyways, so that's the reason in terms of why you should bother about this. Sorry, I'm cruising because I want to give Matilda an opportunity to present her work. I thought now would be a good time as any for me to share some things that we've been doing in our lab, right? Something that we are planning to launch at the upcoming International Symposium on Electronic Theses and Dissertations, which we are hosting in October this year, is an ETD portal, right? So the idea behind this piece of software, this portal, is it's meant to automatically harvest metadata about thesis and dissertation manuscripts produced by students from across universities in Zambia. If you take the time and try and see if you can find research that is being done by, let's say, postgraduate students, for instance, in Zambia, you will have a hard time finding this information, right? You'd more likely have to find yourself searching for this information on, let's say, the UNILAS website. You go to the CBU repository, maybe you go to Nkrumah repository or Chalimbana University's repository. What we are doing with this National ETD portal is we are setting up a platform that is going to centrally make available this sort of information, subsequently enhancing the online visibility of that specific type of research output. Okay, if you access the domain, I mean, we've acquired the domain through Zamren, who happen to be one of our cooperating partners, but work is still in progress for us to actually deploy the platform. Right now, it's just a prototype, but the screenshot kind of showcases exactly how this should work. It turns out that this is not really a new it's not a new innovation, if you will. There are countries such as South Africa, for instance, that have they've set up similar portals. So if you go to netd.ac.za, I don't know if the website is up and running here, you should be able to see what South Africa has actually done here. Maybe the website is not accessible, I'm not sure here. Just try and see if we can find a direct link to the national portal. It appears to be down here. But in addition, it turns out that centrally making available this sort of information will make it possible for us to syndicate this content to other downstream services, they are called. So the NDOTD, for instance, maintains what they call a union catalog. And the idea behind this union catalog is it keeps a record of dissertations that are produced from universities across the world, right? Unfortunately, if you look at this list, what you'll notice is that there's no university, at least last time I checked, there's no university that appears from Zambia, right? In fact, there are very few from the African continent as well. Setting up the NETD portal will make it possible for us to be able to syndicate content to such platforms. Okay. Something else we've been doing, and I've worked with, I think, a total of about 2 master's students so far, is we've been trying to explore the possibility of making use of AI techniques, right, to try and address issues that tend to compromise the discoverability or the online visibility of research output. So we've had students that have implemented, classification models that are able to automatically generate metadata that is otherwise missing on our repository, for instance. We've also worked with students that have looked at building different types of models, models that are aimed at automatically classifying subject tags associated with specific research output. If you look at UNS as a whole, what you begin to realize is that we have different disciplines. But if you look at how the content is curated currently, it turns out that they use generic subject headings. So they are not specific to a particular discipline. My profession is, or my field is computer science. There's a specific, classification scheme that I'm supposed to use to tag that sort of research. A person who does research in chemistry probably uses a classification scheme which is specific to chemistry. Currently, it turns out the UNZA uses generic tags like the one you're seeing on the left side of the current slide here. So this work was aimed at doing something similar to what you're seeing on the right. So a student was able to build a model that was able to classify, publications appropriately, ideally. Just wanted to mention here that in as much as the number of tools that we have worked towards, we're continuously working towards with students that I work with, some solutions to these problems are simple. I think it starts with awareness, taking it upon ourselves as academics to take advantage of self-archiving mechanisms that are inbuilt in most of these platforms. Like for instance, if you are not aware, the UNZA repository is designed in such a way that you can access it, register an account, and deposit content yourself. Because relying on the library to do this is going to make it incredibly hard for them to quickly upload your content. They tend to have a backlog of content that they have to upload. Last time we checked, I think they had a very lean staff complement that was responsible for updating this sort of content. Okay, so awareness, I guess, and training. I just wanted to mention, I'd mentioned that my talk was going to be very quick because I want to give Matilda an opportunity to speak about the work that she did. But just to mention here that what I was talking about is a direct result of work that I've done with really talented students. And I think one of the advantages of working in an environment like UNZA is you have access to talented students, dedicated students. So I've worked with a number of postgraduate students and a whole slew of undergraduate students since 2018 or something. So thank you very much. What I'm going to do now is I am going to ask Matilda to do her part of the presentation, and then we will ask people to maybe ask us questions, and maybe we can have a discussion, a conversation centered around this. Thank you very much. Matilda, I'm going to unshare my screen, and then maybe you can proceed with your talk.